Have you ever been invisible in your own family? Not just overlooked, but deliberately erased while everyone else celebrated around you. My name is Sophie Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, a pediatric nurse at St. Luke's Hospital in Millbrook, Ohio, and a single mother to my 7-year-old son, Caleb. And 2 weeks ago, something happened at my parents' 40th anniversary dinner that changed everything. Something so cruel, so calculated, that it forced me to confront a truth I'd been running from my entire life. But before I tell you what happened at that restaurant, let me take you back to who I was. Because understanding who I became requires understanding who I used to be. For most of my adult life, I was what my family called reliable. What they really meant was exploitable. I was the daughter who sent $400 every month for my father's medication without question. I was the sister who co-signed a $38,000 SUV loan for Madison because she needed it for work. I was the one who picked up the check at every family celebration, every holiday dinner, every emergency that somehow always seemed to fall on my shoulders. And in return, I got silence. I got expectations. I got treated like an ATM with a heartbeat. But none of that prepared me for what happened on that Saturday night in October when my family decided that my son didn't deserve to eat. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. 40 years. A milestone. The kind of celebration that demands perfection, or at least the appearance of it. My mother, Carol, had chosen Harlan's Chop House. If you've never been, imagine the most pretentious steakhouse in town. Dark wood paneling, white tablecloths so crisp they could cut glass, waiters who speak in hushed tones like they're in a library. It's the kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. The whole family was there. My parents, obviously. My sister Madison with her husband Travis and their 3 kids, Emma, age 12, Liam, age 9, and little Sophia, age 5. My Aunt Lorraine, my dad's younger sister, who always seemed to know more than she let on. And then there was me and Caleb. Caleb is 7. He has this way of looking at the world with wide, curious eyes, like everything is still new and magical. He's smart, funny, and kind in a way that makes my heart ache sometimes because I know how hard the world can be. His father left when he was 2, just walked out one day and never looked back. So it's been just us, always just us. That night, Caleb was wearing his best clothes, a button-down shirt I'd ironed carefully and dark pants. He was excited. He'd been talking about going to the fancy restaurant all week. He wanted to see if they had chocolate cake. He wanted to feel special. What he got instead was a lesson in cruelty that no 7-year-old should ever have to learn. We sat down at this enormous round table in the center of the restaurant, the kind of table that says, "Look at us, we're important." My mother had made reservations weeks in advance. She'd coordinated outfits, seating arrangements, even the order in which people would give their toasts. The waiter came over with menus, but before anyone could open them, Madison spoke up. "Oh, don't worry about ordering," she said with this smug smile. "I already pre-ordered for everyone. Now here's the thing about my sister Madison. She's 31, married to Travis, and has this way of inserting herself into situations as if she owns them. She's beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Highlighted hair, designer clothes, nails always perfect. But underneath all that polish is someone who believes the world owes her everything." "I got the ribeye steaks for all the kids," Madison continued, looking around the table with satisfaction. "The 12-ounce cuts with the lobster tails, and for the adults, the 20-ounce prime ribeyes with truffle butter." There were murmurs of appreciation around the table. My father nodded approvingly. My mother smiled that tight smile she gets when she's pleased with how things are going. "And dessert?" Aunt Lorraine asked. "Chocolate lava cakes for the children, creme brulee for the adults," Madison said. "I thought it would be nice to have everything ready so we could focus on celebrating Mom and Dad." It sounded generous. Thoughtful, even. Except for one small detail. One very important detail. Because as Madison listed off who was getting what, I noticed something. She mentioned Emma's steak, Liam's steak, little Sophia's steak, but she didn't mention Caleb. Not once. I waited. Maybe she'd forgotten his name. Maybe it was an oversight. Madison wasn't exactly known for her attention to detail when it came to anyone outside her immediate family. But then the waiter started confirming the orders. So that's 3 children's ribeyes with lobster, correct? For Emma, Liam, and Sophia? Madison nodded. Yes, perfect. And for the adults, 6 prime ribeyes with truffle butter? Exactly. No mention of Caleb. No children's menu option. Nothing. I felt my stomach drop. I looked at my son, who was sitting quietly, his hands folded in his lap, watching the adults talk with that patient politeness kids learn when they realize they're not the center of attention. Madison? I said carefully. What about Caleb? She looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. What about him? He's a child too. Did you order for him? Madison's expression shifted, not to guilt or embarrassment, but to something colder, more calculating. Oh, she said slowly, I didn't think he'd want the same thing. You know, different tastes and all. That's when my father leaned forward. Sophie, maybe you should have brought him something from home if you knew he wouldn't fit in with the group order. Fit in? As if my 7-year-old son was some kind of social misfit who couldn't be bothered to conform to their precious dinner plans. My mother chimed in, her voice sweet but sharp. Well, dear, you do know how particular these restaurants can be. Maybe next time plan ahead better. Plan ahead better for a $40 cover charge per person meal that Madison had pre-ordered for everyone except my child. The appetizers arrived first. Beautifully presented dishes that cost more than I make in a day. The children, Emma, Liam, and Sophia, were given small portions to taste while they waited for their steaks. They giggled and shared, passing plates around like it was a game. Caleb watched. His eyes followed each plate as it passed. He didn't say anything. He just watched. Then Madison did something that I will never forget. Something so casually cruel that it took my breath away. She picked up the bread basket, the complimentary bread basket that comes with every table, and slid it across the table toward Caleb. Here, buddy, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You can have some rolls while you wait. They're really good. The table went quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Complicit quiet. The kind of silence that says everyone knows what's happening but no one wants to acknowledge it. Caleb looked at the bread basket, then he looked at me. His eyes weren't angry. They were confused, hurt, trying to understand why he was being treated differently from his cousins. My face burned with humiliation, not just for myself, but for him. For my son, who deserved so much better than to be handed a breadbasket like a beggar while his cousins feasted on $100 steaks. Dad, I said, turning to my father, this isn't okay. He shrugged. What do you want me to do, Sophie? Madison already ordered. It's done. It's not done, I said, my voice rising slightly. You're telling me my son doesn't get to eat because my sister forgot to include him in her precious pre-order. I didn't forget, Madison snapped. I made a choice. There's a difference. A choice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You chose to exclude a 7-year-old child from dinner? He's your responsibility, my mother said calmly, as if discussing the weather. If you wanted him to have a proper meal, you should have planned accordingly. We can't be expected to anticipate every need. Every need. As if feeding a child at a family celebration was some unreasonable demand. I looked around the table. Aunt Lorraine was studying her napkin. Travis was checking his phone. My father was staring at his water glass. No one met my eyes. No one defended my son. That's when I realized something profound. This wasn't about forgetting. This wasn't about planning. This was about power. About showing me and Caleb exactly where we stood in the family hierarchy. At the bottom. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm. For Caleb. Always for Caleb. I raised my hand to catch the waiter's attention. When he came over, I spoke clearly enough for the entire table to hear. I'd like to order a ribeye steak for my son, the same 12-ounce cut with lobster tail that the other children are having, and a chocolate lava cake for dessert. The waiter nodded and wrote it down. Excellent choice. Would you like that added to the main table bill? No, I said firmly. Put it on a separate check, just for me and my son. Madison's head snapped up. What are you doing? I'm making sure my son eats, I said simply. You're splitting the bill? My mother's voice had an edge to it now. Sophie, that's incredibly rude. We're supposed to be celebrating together. We can celebrate together, I said, but I'm not paying for my son to be excluded from a meal that was supposedly for everyone. The tension at the table was palpable. You could have cut it with one of those expensive steak knives. My father finally spoke up. Sophie, don't make a scene. Just add it to the main bill and we'll sort it out later. There's nothing to sort out, I said. I'm paying for my son's meal. Separately. End of discussion. Madison rolled her eyes. Fine, be dramatic. See if I care. But I could see she did care. Her jaw was tight. Her perfectly manicured fingers were tapping against the tablecloth. She hadn't expected me to push back. None of them had. For years, I'd been the easy one, the compliant one, the one who smoothed over conflicts and paid the bills and kept the peace. But something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was seeing Caleb's hurt expression. Maybe it was realizing that no one at this table actually cared about me or my son. Maybe it was just the accumulation of 1,000 small indignities finally reaching their breaking point. Whatever it was, I was done being invisible. The rest of the dinner passed in awkward silence. The steaks arrived, beautifully presented, sizzling on hot plates. The children ate happily, oblivious to the tension. Caleb received his meal a few minutes later, and I watched him take his first bite with relief. At least he was eating. At least he was being treated with basic dignity. But I couldn't enjoy the moment. My mind was racing. I was thinking about all the times I'd swallowed my pride. All the times I'd paid for things I couldn't afford. All the times I'd been told I was being difficult for having boundaries. When dessert came, I watched my family laugh and joke and celebrate. They toasted my parents' 40 years together. They shared stories and memories. And through it all, I felt like an outsider looking in. That's when I made my decision. As the waiter brought the checks, I pulled out my credit card before anyone else could react. I handed him my separate check for Caleb's meal and mine, plus tip. Sophie, my mother said sharply, we haven't discussed how we're splitting the main bill yet. I'm not splitting it, I said calmly. The table went silent again. What do you mean? Madison asked. I mean, I'm not paying for any part of this dinner except what I ordered for myself and my son. You all can figure out how to split the rest among yourselves. My father's face turned red. Sophie, that's outrageous. You always pay your share. Not anymore, I said. And then I said the words that would change everything. The family bank is closed. You should have seen their faces. Shock, anger, disbelief. Like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. What does that mean? My mother demanded. It means I'm done, I said, standing up. I'm done being your personal ATM. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done watching my son be treated like he doesn't matter. Caleb looked up at me, crumbs from his chocolate cake on his chin. Are we leaving, Mommy? Yes, sweetheart, I said, taking his hand. We're leaving. You can't just leave, Madison shouted. This is Mom and Dad's anniversary. Then celebrate, I said, but do it without me and without my money. I pulled out enough cash to cover our meal and left it on the table. Then I took Caleb's hand and walked out of Harlan's chop house, leaving my family stunned and silent behind us. As we walked to the car, Caleb squeezed my hand. Mommy, did I do something wrong? My heart broke. No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. They did. But why didn't they want me to eat? I knelt down to look him in the eyes. Sometimes people make bad choices, Caleb, and sometimes those bad choices hurt other people. But that's not your fault. You deserve to be treated with respect. Always. He nodded slowly, still trying to process it all. Okay, Mommy. As I buckled him into his car seat, I realized something. That night wasn't just about a steak. It was about years of being undervalued, exploited, and dismissed. And I was finally done with it. But I had no idea what was coming next. Because 2 weeks later, when I applied for a mortgage to buy my dream house for Caleb, I discovered that my family's betrayal went far deeper than a cruel dinner. They had stolen from me. Systematically. Deliberately. And the worst part? They thought I'd never find out. So there I was, walking out of that restaurant with my son's hand in mine, feeling a mixture of terror and liberation. Terror because I'd just declared war on my entire family. Liberation because, for the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself and my child over their expectations. But as I drove home that night, putting Caleb to bed and tucking him in with extra kisses, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That dinner had been a symptom, not the disease, and I was about to discover just how sick things really were. Let me back up a bit and tell you about what I was working toward. Because understanding my motivation requires understanding my dream. For 6 years, I'd been saving. Every overtime shift at Street, Luke's hospital. Every birthday money I didn't spend. Every tax refund. I lived frugally, drove an old car, wore clothes from discount stores, and put every spare dollar into a savings account with one purpose: buying a home for Caleb and me. Not just any home, a specific home. A little blue house on Alder Street with white trim and a front porch perfect for sitting on summer evenings. 2 bedrooms, one for Caleb, one for me. A small backyard where he could play. A neighborhood with good schools and safe streets. It wasn't much by most standards, but it was ours, or at least it would be. I'd saved $28,000. It had taken every ounce of discipline I possessed, but I'd done it. And 2 weeks after that disastrous anniversary dinner, I finally felt ready to take the next step. I met with Dana Whitfield, a loan officer at First National Bank. She was in her 50s, professional but warm, with the kind of steady presence that made you feel like everything would be okay. "Sophie," she said, reviewing my application, "your income is solid. Your employment history is excellent, and your down payment is impressive. This looks very promising." I felt a surge of hope. After years of sacrifice, maybe I was finally going to get what I'd worked for. "However," Dana continued, "we need to run everything through underwriting. That's standard procedure. They'll verify all your financial information, check your credit thoroughly, and make sure everything adds up. Usually takes about 10 business days." "Of course," I said, "whatever it takes." She smiled. "I have a good feeling about this, Sophie. Let's see what underwriting says." I left that meeting feeling optimistic. For the first time in months, maybe years, I allowed myself to imagine living in that blue house. Imagine Caleb having his own room. Imagine hosting birthday parties in the backyard. Imagine stability, safety, peace. But optimism, as I was about to learn, is a dangerous thing when you don't know what's buried in your past. While I waited for underwriting to process my application, my phone became a battlefield. The day after the anniversary dinner, I woke up to 17 missed calls. Voicemails from my mother, my father, Madison, even Travis. Text messages that ranged from concern to accusatory. "Sophie, we need to talk about last night. Mom, you embarrassed us in front of everyone. Madison, your father is very upset. Please call us Dad." But it was social media that really showed me the extent of their anger. Madison posted a carefully crafted message on Facebook. Nothing explicit, nothing that would look bad to outsiders, but loaded with implication. "Family is about supporting each other through thick and thin," she wrote, accompanied by a photo from the anniversary dinner showing everyone smiling except me and Caleb, who weren't in the picture. "Grateful for those who understand that love means sacrifice." The comments poured in. Relatives I barely knew offering sympathy, friends of my parents agreeing that I'd been difficult. One aunt even commented, "Some people just don't understand family values." Family values. As if excluding a child from dinner and then blaming his mother was a value worth defending. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I let it burn itself out while I focused on work and Caleb. But inside, I was seething. Not just at their cruelty, but at their audacity. Their absolute certainty that I would cave, that I would apologize, that I would come crawling back with my wallet open. They didn't know me anymore. Or rather, they didn't know the new me. The me who had finally seen clearly. Despite my silence, the pressure escalated. My mother called repeatedly, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Finally, she demanded I come to Sunday dinner to work things out. I almost said no. But part of me wanted to hear what they had to say. Part of me needed to understand just how deep this dysfunction went. So I went, with Caleb. The atmosphere was tense from the moment we walked in. My mother greeted us with stiff hugs. My father avoided eye contact. Madison sat at the head of the table like she owned it, her arms crossed, her expression cold. We sat down to eat homemade lasagna, garlic bread, salad, normal family food. but nothing about this dinner was normal. Halfway through the meal, Madison cleared her throat. Sophie, we need to discuss Emma's education. I looked up. Okay, she's been accepted to Brookfield Academy. It's a private school, very prestigious. The deposit is due next week, $4,000. I waited. There was always a catch with Madison. I was hoping you could cover it, she said casually, as if asking me to pass the salt. The table went silent. Everyone watched me, waiting for my response. No, I said simply. Madison blinked. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not paying for Emma's private school. I have my own expenses, my own priorities. But you always help, my mother said gently, using that tone that suggested I was being unreasonable. Family helps family. Not anymore, I said. Remember, the family bank is closed. Madison's face flushed red. This isn't about money, Sophie. This is about Emma's future. Then fund it yourself, I said. You and Travis both work. Save up, make sacrifices, like I've been doing for years. You're being selfish, my father said sharply. Am I asked. Or am I finally treating my money and my son as priorities instead of afterthoughts? My mother leaned forward. Sophie, dear, I think you're misunderstanding your role in this family. Your job has always been to contribute, to support, to give. My job? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not an employee, Mom. I'm your daughter. And daughters contribute, she said firmly. That's how families work. Everyone plays their part. I looked around the table, at Madison's entitled expression, at my father's avoidance, at my mother's steely determination, and I realized something horrifying. They genuinely believed I existed to serve them, that my purpose in the family was financial support, that my value was measured in dollars sent and bills paid. And Caleb? He was just collateral damage in their exploitation of me. I left that dinner more determined than ever to buy my house, to create a life for Caleb that wasn't defined by other people's expectations, to build something that was truly ours. 3 days later, Dana called. Sophie, I need you to come in, she said, her voice serious. There are some issues with your underwriting. My stomach dropped. What kind of issues? Can you come to the office? It's better to discuss this in person. I arranged for a neighbor to watch Caleb and drove to the bank. Dana met me in her office, her expression grave. Sophie, underwriting found 2 significant red flags in your credit report. I need to explain them to you so we can determine next steps. She pulled up my credit file on her computer and turned the screen toward me. First, there's a $38,000 auto loan co-signed by you. It's currently 90 days delinquent. I stared at the screen. What? That's Madison's SUV loan. I co-signed it 2 years ago when she bought her new vehicle. Yes, Dana said, and she hasn't made a payment in 3 months. This is severely impacting your debt-to-income ratio and your credit score. I felt dizzy, but she promised she'd keep up with payments. She told me she had it covered. Unfortunately, promises don't appear on credit reports, Dana said gently. Only actual payments do, and right now, this loan is in default status. I tried to process this. Madison had used my credit to buy a luxury SUV. She'd promised to maintain payments, and now she'd defaulted, dragging my credit score down with her. How much does this affect my mortgage application? I asked. Significantly, Dana admitted. But it's not necessarily disqualifying. We can work with this if we address the second issue. What's the second issue? Dana hesitated. There's a credit card account opened in your name 4 years ago. It has a current balance of $9,400. I frowned. I don't have a credit card with that balance. I have one card and I pay it off monthly. That's what I thought too, Dana said. But according to the credit bureaus, there's a Visa card opened 4 years ago using your Social Security number. It's been active since then, with regular charges and payments. My blood ran cold. That's not mine. I believe you, Dana said quickly. But the credit bureaus don't, and until we resolve this, it's considered your debt. Who opened it? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. The account was opened using your parents' address and phone number, Dana said. The billing statements were sent there. All payments were made from your mother's checking account. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. My mother, I whispered. It appears so, Dana said. Sophie, this is identity theft. Even if it's family, it's still fraud, and it's seriously complicating your mortgage application. I left the bank in a fog. Identity theft by my own mother. For 4 years, $9,400 spent without my knowledge or consent. As I drove home, my mind raced back through the past 4 years. The times my mother had asked for my social security number for paperwork. The times she'd handled my mail. The times she'd offered to help with my finances. Had she been using my identity this whole time? When I got home, I pulled out my credit card statements from the past 4 years. I'd never scrutinized them closely. I trusted my family, trusted that they respected my boundaries. But now, looking at them with fresh eyes, I saw patterns I'd missed. Charges at grocery stores I never shopped at. Restaurant charges from places I'd never eaten. Salon charges, clothing stores, even charges from Harlan's Chop House, the anniversary dinner, the steaks. Had those been charged to my fraudulent card? I felt sick. Not just from the betrayal, but from the realization of how calculated this had been. My mother hadn't just borrowed money or asked for help. She'd systematically stolen my identity, opened accounts in my name, and used my credit to fund her lifestyle and her family's expenses. And she'd done it believing I'd never find out. Or worse, believing I wouldn't care. I called Dana back immediately. "I need to know my options," I said. "How do I fix this?" "There are 2 paths," Dana explained. Option 1, you pay the $9,400 yourself, close the account, and we proceed with your mortgage application. This is the fastest route, but obviously expensive. "I can't afford that," I said. "I've been saving for a down payment. Paying $9,000 would wipe out my savings." "I understand," Dana said. Option 2, you file a formal identity theft police report. You'll need to submit an affidavit naming the perpetrator, in this case, your mother. Once the police report is filed and the fraud investigation begins, we can remove the fraudulent debt from your liability. But it takes time. Usually 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days. The blue house on Alder Street might be gone by then. Someone else might buy it. But there's another consideration, Dana added. If you file a police report against your mother, it will create a permanent record. It could affect your relationship with your family irreparably. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the breadbasket, about Madison's smug smile, about my mother's belief that I existed to contribute financially, about the ledger I suspected existed but hadn't yet found. "Dana," I said quietly, "my family has been stealing from me for years. Not just money, but dignity, respect, love. I'm done letting them." "Then option 2 is your path," she said. "File the police report. Submit the affidavit. We'll pause your mortgage application until the fraud is resolved, but once it is, you should be able to proceed." I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Caleb came home from school, chattering about his day, unaware that his mother was contemplating suing his grandmother for identity theft. I looked at my son, his bright eyes, his innocent smile, his trust in the world, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let this cycle continue. I couldn't let my family teach Caleb that exploitation was normal. That family meant obligation without reciprocity. That love came with a price tag. I had to break free, even if it cost me everything. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. I didn't ask permission. I just went. My mother answered the door, surprised to see me. "Sophie, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, walking past her into the living room. She followed, confused. "About what? The school deposit? Sophie, I told you, Emma needs." "About the credit card," I interrupted. "The Visa card you opened in my name 4 years ago." Her face went pale. For just a second, I saw panic flash across her features. Then it was gone, replaced by that familiar mask of calm superiority. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said smoothly. "Don't lie to me, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "I know you opened a credit card using my social security number. I know you've been using it for 4 years. I know the balance is $9,400. She sat down slowly as if buying time. "Sophie, you're misunderstanding. I didn't steal from you. I managed our family's finances." Managed? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You committed identity theft." I protected your credit, she corrected. I made every payment on time, never missed one. Your credit score stayed perfect because of me. Because of you. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You used my identity to fund groceries, salon visits, anniversary dinners. You treated me like a shared family asset, not a person. Her expression hardened. That's what family does, Sophie. We share resources, we support each other. You supported yourself, I said, at my expense, without my consent, without my knowledge. She shrugged. You would have said no, so I did what needed to be done. What needed to be done? My voice rose. Mom, you stole from me for 4 years. That's not support, that's fraud. It's semantics, she said dismissively. The money was spent on family, on keeping us fed and housed and comfortable. I was managing our collective resources. Collective resources? I stared at her in disbelief. I never agreed to be part of any collective. I'm an individual. I have my own life, my own son, my own dreams, and you violated my trust and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle. She stood up, her composure cracking slightly. You're being dramatic, Sophie. This is how families work. Your grandmother did the same thing to me. I learned from her. And now you're passing that dysfunction to me, I said. But it ends today. I'm filing a police report. I'm disputing every charge on that card, and I'm never letting you access my finances again. Her eyes narrowed. If you do that, Sophie, you'll regret it. Family doesn't sue family. Family doesn't steal from family either, I said. But here we are. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the living room, her face twisted with rage. As I was leaving, my father came out of the garage. He'd been working on his car, grease on his hands, looking older than I remembered. Sophie, he called, can we talk? I hesitated, then nodded. We walked into the garage, the smell of oil and metal surrounding us. I know about the card, he said quietly. I stared at him. You knew? He nodded, not meeting my eyes. Carol told me, years ago, she said it was necessary, that you wouldn't understand, and you just accepted that. Anger surged through me. Dad, she stole from me, from your daughter. He sighed heavily. It's complicated, Sophie. Your mother, she has her ways, her methods. I've learned not to question them. Not to question them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, this is criminal. This is wrong. I know, he said softly. But confronting Carol, it's easier to let things go, to keep the peace. At what cost? I demanded. At the cost of your integrity? At the cost of your daughter's trust? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw sadness in his eyes. Regret, but also resignation. I'm sorry, Sophie, he said. I should have stopped her, but I didn't, and now I don't know how to fix it. You start by telling the truth, I said. You start by supporting me when I file that police report. You start by choosing right over easy. He shook his head. I can't do that, Sophie. I can't choose sides. Carol is my wife. You're my daughter. I'm stuck in the middle. No, Dad, I said sadly. You chose sides a long time ago. You chose comfort over courage, peace over justice, and now you have to live with that choice. I walked out of the garage, leaving him alone with his regrets. It hurt more than I expected. My father had always been distant, but I believed he loved me. Now I realize his love was conditional. Conditional on my silence, my compliance, my willingness to be exploited. I called Dana that afternoon. I'm ready to proceed with option 2, I said. I want to file a police report. Are you sure? She asked. This is a big step, Sophie. Once you file that report, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said firmly. My mother stole from me. I need to hold her accountable. Okay, Dana said. Here's what we need to do. First, you'll file a dispute with the credit card company. That will trigger notifications to your parents. They'll receive letters informing them of the dispute. Second, you'll file a police report for identity theft. You'll need to submit a notarized affidavit naming your mother as the perpetrator. Once those documents are filed, we can begin removing the fraudulent debt from your liability. How long will that take? Typically 60 to 90 days, she said. But every case is different. The key is documentation. Keep records of everything. Every conversation, every letter, every interaction. I will, I said. Thank you, Dana, for believing me. That's my job, she said warmly. But Sophie, you're doing the right thing. It won't be easy, but it's right. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time since discovering the fraud, I had a plan, a path forward. It wouldn't be easy, and it would cost me my relationship with my family, but it would give me something more valuable: freedom. Before filing the police report, I decided to make one last attempt at resolution. Not because I thought it would work, but because I needed to know I'd tried everything. I proposed a family meeting, a formal sit-down where we could discuss transferring the debt legally, creating a repayment plan, and establishing boundaries. I even typed up a document outlining my proposal. We met at my parents' house on a Tuesday evening. Madison and Travis were there, along with my parents. The atmosphere was icy. "I've prepared a proposal," I said, handing out copies of my typed document. "It outlines a formal transfer of the credit card debt to Madison, since she benefited most from the charges. It includes a repayment schedule and establishes clear boundaries going forward." Madison scanned the document and laughed. "You're joking, right?" "I'm completely serious," I said. "This is ridiculous," Travis said. "You're trying to make us pay for something Mom did." "Mom used my identity," I said. "But the charges were largely for your family's benefit. Madison's salon visits, family dinners, groceries. It's only fair that you assume responsibility." "No," Madison said flatly. "Absolutely not. My mother opened the account," I said. "She's the one who committed fraud, but you all benefited, so you all share responsibility." "We didn't ask her to open the card," my father said. "But you didn't stop her either," I countered. "You all knew, you all allowed it, and now you're refusing to take accountability." Carol spoke up, her voice cold. "Sophie, this is your problem, not ours. You should have monitored your credit more carefully. You should have been more vigilant." "More vigilant?" I couldn't believe her audacity. "Mom, you used my social security number without my consent. You opened accounts in my name. That's not a failure of vigilance, that's criminal fraud." "It's family," she said simply. "And family doesn't involve lawyers and police reports. Then family shouldn't involve theft either," I said. "But here we are." Madison stood up. "I'm done with this. Sophie, you're attacking us. You're trying to destroy this family over money. I'm trying to protect myself," I said. "From people who claim to love me but treat me like an ATM. If you file that police report," Carol said, her voice deadly quiet, "you will no longer be welcome in this family. You will be cut off. Completely." I looked around the table, at my sister's angry face, at my father's avoidance, at my mother's steely determination, and I realized they weren't bluffing. They would actually disown me rather than take responsibility for their actions. "Then I guess I have my answer," I said, standing up. "I'll be filing the police report tomorrow." I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. This time there was no turning back. That night, unable to sleep, I kept thinking about something my mother had said during our confrontation. "Your grandmother did the same thing to me." What did that mean? Was this a generational pattern? Had my grandmother exploited my mother the same way my mother had exploited me? I needed answers, and I suspected they might be in my parents' house. The next morning, while they were at church, I used my key to enter their home. I wasn't proud of it. Sneaking into my parents' house felt wrong, but I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I went straight to my father's desk in the study. He kept important documents there: tax returns, insurance policies, loan paperwork. If there was evidence of the fraud, it would be there. I searched through drawers methodically: bills, statements, old correspondence. And then, in the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a stack of outdated manuals, I found it. A green cloth ledger, bound in worn fabric, labeled simply "Household" in my mother's neat handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page was dated 15 years ago, and what I found inside made my blood run cold. It was a record, a detailed, itemized record of every expense my mother had incurred on my behalf since I was 12 years old. Braces, $800 plus 5% interest. Prom dresses, $300 plus interest. Gas money, varying amounts, all with interest added. College expenses, thousands of dollars, meticulously tracked with compound interest calculations. Every single thing she'd ever spent on me was recorded as a debt I owed, with interest, accumulating year after year. But that wasn't the worst part. I flipped to pages documenting Madison's expenses: school supplies, clothing, extracurricular activities, even her wedding costs. And next to each entry, instead of debt owed, it said gift, gift. While I was being billed for basic necessities with interest, my sister was receiving everything as gifts. No debt, no interest, no expectation of repayment. The double standard was staggering, cruel, calculated, and then I turned to the newest page, the most recent entries, and my heart stopped. There, in my mother's handwriting, was a new section, labeled C for Caleb, entries for shoes I'd bought him, a birthday bike, school supplies. Even the steak from Harlan's Chop House was listed, anniversary dinner meal, $120 plus 5% interest. She was already tracking my son's expenses, already treating him as a debt account, already planning to exploit him the same way she'd exploited me. I sat on the floor of my father's study, the ledger in my hands, and cried, not just for myself, but for Caleb, for the cycle of abuse that had been passed down through generations, for the realization that my family didn't see children as loved ones, they saw them as investments, as sources of future revenue, and I was determined to break that cycle, right here, right now. I took photos of every page in the ledger, evidence, proof of the systematic exploitation I'd endured. Then I put it back exactly where I'd found it and left. That afternoon, I took 3 decisive actions. First, I canceled the automatic monthly transfer of $400 I'd been sending my parents from my father's medication. I called the bank and stopped the payment permanently. Second, I froze my credit at all 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. No one would be opening accounts in my name ever again. Third, I filed a formal dispute with the credit card company for the fraudulent Visa card. I submitted all the documentation I had, including the timeline of charges and my statement that I never authorized the account. Within 48 hours, my mother received notification of the dispute, and within 72 hours, she was at my door. I heard the pounding before I even opened it. When I did, she was standing there, face red with rage, holding the bank's dispute letter. "How could you?" she screamed. "How could you report your own mother?" "I didn't report you yet," I said calmly. "I disputed the charges. There's a difference. You're destroying this family," she yelled. "Over money, over petty grievances." "It's not petty," I said. "It's $9,400. It's 4 years of fraud. It's my identity, my credit, my future." "You're ungrateful," she spat. "After everything I've done for you, like charging me interest for braces?" I asked. "Like tracking every dollar you spent on me while giving Madison everything as gifts? Like starting a ledger for Caleb before he even turned 8? Her face went white. "You went through my things. I found the truth," I corrected, "and now everyone will know it." She lunged at me, but I closed the door in her face. Through the wood, I heard her screaming threats, promises of disownment, curses. I leaned against the door, shaking but resolute. This was war now, and I was finally fighting back. The next few weeks were hell. My family launched a smear campaign, spreading rumors through group chats, church circles, and extended family networks. I was portrayed as paranoid, ungrateful, destructive. A daughter who sued her own mother over misunderstandings. But I held firm. I documented everything. I stayed focused on my goal. Then the collection calls started. Debt collectors began calling St. Luke's Hospital, asking for me regarding Madison's overdue SUV loan. They called the nurses' station, disrupting my work, embarrassing me in front of colleagues. I handled it professionally. I cited federal collection laws that prohibit workplace contact. I got confirmation numbers for each violation. I reported them to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Through it all, I had support. Ruth Delgado, a retired nurse who'd become my mentor at the hospital, listened to my story and offered wisdom. "Sophie," she said one day over coffee, "you're not just breaking free from your family. You're breaking a generational curse. That takes courage, and it takes time. Be patient with yourself." Her words grounded me, reminded me that this wasn't just about money or credit scores. It was about healing, about reclaiming my identity, about teaching Caleb that he deserved better. When Detective Marsh met with me to file the identity theft report, he was sympathetic but direct. "Sophie, I need you to understand what you're doing. Filing this affidavit names your mother as the perpetrator. It creates a permanent legal record. Are you absolutely certain? I am, I said without hesitation. She stole from me. She needs to be held accountable. He nodded. Then let's get this done. We completed the paperwork. I signed the notarized affidavit. I filed the police report. And for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. My family had disowned me. My father had a brief scare, chest pains that turned out to be anxiety and reflux, though Madison claimed it was stress from my actions. My mother threatened to cut Caleb off from his grandparents entirely, but I stood firm. I reassured Caleb that none of this was his fault, that he owed nothing to anyone, that he was loved unconditionally, not conditionally based on what he could provide. And then, 90 days after filing the report, Dana called with news. Sophie, the fraudulent debt has been removed from your liability. Your mortgage application is approved. You can close on the blue house on Alder Street. I cried. Happy tears, relief tears, tears of vindication. Moving day arrived with friends, fellow nurses, and Ruth helping me carry boxes into my new home. The blue house with white trim and a front porch perfect for summer evenings. Our home. A week later, my father visited. Just him. He handed Caleb a $20 bill and whispered, "Don't tell Grandma, and don't write it down." Caleb looked at me, confused. I smiled sadly. "It's okay, baby. Keep it." My father met my eyes. There was apology there, regret, but also recognition. He knew what I'd done, what I'd sacrificed, and he respected it, even if he couldn't emulate it. Madison called a month later. "Mom is demanding I pay my share of everything now," she said, her voice strained. "She's tracking my expenses too. Sophie, what do I do?" "Break free," I said gently. "Stop enabling her. Set boundaries. It's hard, but it's worth it." She hung up without saying goodbye, but I knew she'd remember my words. Maybe someday she'd find the courage to follow my example. Today, 6 months later, Caleb and I have a Saturday morning tradition. We go to a local diner, order pancakes, and talk about our week. No guilt, no ledgers, no debts, just us. And for the first time in my life, I am truly free. If you're watching this and recognizing your own story and mine, I want you to know something: you deserve better. Your children deserve better. Family should be a source of love and support, not exploitation and obligation. Breaking free isn't easy. It costs relationships. It invites judgment. It requires courage you didn't know you had. But on the other side of that courage is freedom, authenticity, peace. The family bank may be closed, but your life is just beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it. Someone out there needs to hear it. And remember, you are not alone.